How exactly does this drug work?
Oh, God. It basically blocks how the virus is replicating in a person. And by blocking the virus from replicating, you can hopefully prevent the virus from infecting more cells and causing more damage in the body and causing more inflammation. So by blocking this pathway, it's presumed to really help people recover.
Okay. And so that was, as Dr. Anthony Fauci was laying it out yesterday, one of the things that he was really excited about, that finally there was a drug that can seem to have some effect on all of this. But and then as he was laying out why there was some optimism around this, he was looking at the results of a clinical study. What did it find that caught your attention, Dr. Bogoch?
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, firstly, just taking a step back, it's kind of unusual. We are in unprecedented times, and I appreciate that, information has to be shared rapidly. But usually when we're sharing information like this, we have access to the data. It's usually peer-reviewed and published in a high-impact, high-profile journal, and that, people who practice medicine and scientists get to look at all the data. And usually we mull it over and think, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and figure out a way to integrate this in our practice. But yesterday, as you just point out, Dr. Anthony Fauci just told us what happened with this and gave us some of the early results. And we don't really know how much went into this. We don't have all the data available to us. But the things that struck me was that he said, this was significant in that it decreased the length of stay of sick people in hospital to 11 days from about 15 days on average, and that was statistically significant. The other thing that he said was that there was a trend. It wasn't statistically significant, but there was a trend towards a lower mortality, lower probability of death in people who received this drug to about 8% compared to people who got a placebo. They had about an 11% chance of death. And it wasn't statistically significant because they stopped the study. They couldn't continue enrolling people. The other thing that stood out was that the study was actually stopped early, and it was stopped early by what's called a Data Safety Monitoring Board, the DSMB. This is a completely independent group of people that monitor the study. They have no vested interest whether the drug works or not. They have no financial interest. And they stopped the study because they felt there was an ethical obligation to people who were in the placebo group because the drug was showing some statistically significant benefit. So those are the things that stood out to me.
It's interesting. You mentioned not peer-reviewed, not published, but with the placebo, it was a double-blind study. So it was, significant in how it was handled. And it led to pretty extraordinary declaration from Dr. Fauci that this is the new standard of care. Some people are concerned about rushing too quickly on this, Dr. Bogoch. Do you share that?
Yeah, I'm worried about what this is going to do between now and between when we actually have access to all the data, which won't actually be very long. But, all we have is some shreds of information. And we haven't really had time as a medical and scientific community to really look at the data and discuss it. Usually what happens is we look at the data, we discuss it as a community, we come up with some consensus, we come up with our individual opinions, but they're evidence-based and data-driven opinions. We can look at the strengths and the weaknesses of the study and figure out how are we going to integrate this into our clinical practice. But of course, I'm not knocking Dr. Anthony Fauci. I appreciate that there is an ethical obligation to report these findings in real time. It just puts us in a very difficult situation when we have one of the world's most high-profile physicians saying this will be the standard of care. Now we ask ourselves, okay, now what? Are we supposed to put all our patients that are sick on this drug? Some of us don't even have access to this drug.
Well, I want to talk about that.
There's a lot of issues. Yeah.
I think that's really important because I think people need to understand. I mean, you can understand why there's such enthusiasm because it is so bleak out there. There is no treatment. There is no vaccine. And so many people are becoming sick and the economy shut right down. Everyone's looking for a way forward. But this is for the people who are in hospital, who are the sickest coronavirus patients. We should be clear, I think, this morning that this is not a public health tool. This is no pill that we can all just pop, is it?
Oh, no, exactly. Yeah, this is an injection. This is really for people who are sick and like on the sicker end of the spectrum in the hospital. So absolutely, this is not for someone with who's home and just feeling a little crummy for a few days, who has a positive diagnosis. This certainly would not be for them. In all fairness, there's a lot of other clinical trials that are going on that are looking at different drugs for people in those groups. So we'll have some wonderful data emerging soon, probably in the next couple of weeks. There's a ton of research going on, and I really hope that this is the first of many steps forward in the terms of how we can better treat and prevent COVID-19. We were looking for a win, right? I mean, we've been in this for about 5 months. We've known this virus has existed for 5 months. We know what the terrible human toll that this can take, and of course the terrible economic toll and political toll that this can take. And finally, it looks like we finally have something that works. So I think it's time to be excited about this, and it's very reasonable. But on the other hand, I kind of want to temper that excitement, because many of us in the medical and scientific community want to actually see the data first and figure out, how good is it and how do we integrate this into our daily care of patients with COVID-19.
And the other thing is, you probably also want to make sure you get access to this drug. Right now, we've been talking this morning, and it's not approved for use in Canada. The company is Gilead, and it's been making the drug available on a compassionate grounds to hospitals in Canada. I don't know how widespread its use is. Maybe you can help me with this. But what is likely to happen? Can Canadian patients in this same severe condition, will they have access to this, Dr. Bogoch?
Yeah, so currently there would be significant restrictions to getting access to the drug. A physician would not be able to just write a simple prescription and then the drug would just magically show up. That is not how it would work as of today. Most people who are getting access to this drug are actually enrolled in clinical trials. Now, fortunately, many of the hospitals across Canada are participating in enrolling patients in clinical trials. So this drug certainly might be available in some settings. But, it's interesting. I'd be very curious to see how the next few weeks roll out as we digest this information, as we wait for the peer-reviewed publication of this, and Canadian physicians and scientists and Health Canada can look at the data and rapidly figure out how this drug will be integrated into clinical care. And then, of course, the next question is, how do we actually access the drug? And can we loosen restrictions on this drug, integrate it into our care, and have the the governance over what drugs we're allowed to use rapidly change to allow for this. And then, of course, even if we allow for this drug to be used, and even if we want to prescribe it, we actually need the drug. And Gilead will probably be mass producing and mass delivering this to many places who are going to be looking for this drug. So I think there's a lot of different hurdles to overcome, but they certainly can be overcome.